Max Payne is a series lost. It lost it all with Max Payne 3. Before that, it had so much to live for. It had dreams, ambitions, ideas. Now those ideas are ground down to nothing, like a nub of soap you just refuse to throw away. Max himself is a shell of a man. Who he was, taken away and replaced with a burned-down cigarette in a room full of chest-high walls. But I see you wondering, how did we get here? And who even was this man who sacrificed himself on the altar of modernity? To answer that, we gotta go back to July 23rd, 2001, Finland, where a small company believed it had the remedy for what ailed the games industry. And that remedy was pain. Remedy came in making Max Payne like a puppy with a coding degree in one paw and the hard-boiled detective TV tropes page in the other. They do things their own way, and that way is to cram realism and physicality into every ratty corner of their dungy digital New York. It's a small thing to see cabinets collide with Max as they open, but here chooses just how far Remedy will go. Not allowing the player this small convenience that they might feel just that little bit more immersed into the game. These scenes are created with a realism unlike our own, a filmic realism. Max Payne doesn't care to show us people at their most mundane and their most realistic, but in the way that is most dramatic. The design of his model? Born from an utterly unchecked curiosity with the art of photogrammetry, stapling a paper printout of the creative director Sam Lake's grimace onto a mannequin. So much detail that Max might emulate his filmic counterparts of Travolta, Ford, and Reeves in the most basic of ways. He just has a recognizable face. Any experience with noir fiction before might have left you feeling like protagonists such as Dresden or Deckard are nothing but a collection of cliches, but Max dials those aspects up to an unbelievable degree. His wife and child murdered as he arrives home, only a moment too late. Max has nothing left to live for and throws his life at ever more dangerous assignments until he's deep undercover for the DEA. A cop on the edge with nothing to live for, Max's assignment goes sour when his only contact is murdered in front of his own eyes. Outed as a cop to the gangs he fooled and a criminal to the police he served. Max has nothing to live for but revenge, and he won't stop until he finds who was responsible for his wife's murder. He could only be more cliche if he was 3 days from retirement. The influences are clear to see. Wu, Wachowski, and many others. If it seems like all I'm doing is dropping names like an ugly baby, well, all I'm really doing is imitating my subject, Remedy themselves. Everywhere Max turns, he sees reckless allusions to Norse mythology are thrown around with all the excitement and insight of Okabe, Rintaro, and ketamine. Baldur, the name of his slain contact, Valkyr, the drug that drives the town, Ragnarok, its biggest club, and Woden, overseeing everything, guiding Max's actions. Bad guys casually converse in the halls, ignorant of gunfire and screams, only a few feet away. Documents and bits of lore dot the environment for you to discover. Not played out live, the game pauses to show you a short novel sequence for each of these little narrative nuggets. 2 short montages of trash 90s television played out live in the environment. I positively love them both, especially the absolutely fabulous lords and ladies. While both of these presentational styles are awkward and unrefined, they are perfectly in line with the unyielding adoration Remedy has for telling stories in their levels, nearly as much, if not more, than they tell them in their cutscenes. It would be some number of years before this presentational style would reach its zenith, realizing its desires to be more than a few jokes cheaper than Max's gin. But this is truly the genesis of modern environmental storytelling. At least for Remedy.
Previously on Lords and Ladies.
Lady Amelia, Marquis Valentine asks for an audience.
Thank you, Lawrence.
My lady.
My lord?
And now, an all-new episode of Lords and Ladies, brought to you in part by Acer Corporation.
My lady.
My lord?
My lady, there is a matter of great importance I must bring to your attention.
My lord, there is?
Indeed, my lady, there is indeed. From the very first moment we met, upon that distant forest path, there has been sunlight in the autumn leaves blazing like the colors of your hair.
Oh, my lord, you should not speak so.
But, my lady, I must.
My lord, no, I forbid you. This cannot be. This must not be.
But why, my love, why?
My lord, it is too dreadful. Do not force me to speak the words.
My lady, I beg of you, I must know. I would rather die than not know.
Yes, my lord, we should both be dead, for this shame is too great for the living. My lord, I am your long-lost sister.
These farcical interludes provide much-needed texture and verve to the gray and brown corridors. The levels on display are utterly dull in concept. A rundown apartment, another rundown apartment, a series of roofs atop rundown apartments. You get the idea. The grayer, the better. These drab and dingy corridors in the Big Apple are far from devoid of creativity, however. Everything is interactable. Just as Max must remark upon every syllable that proceeds from his mouth, the level designers must leave their mark upon every sink, toilet, and cabinet. Slot a coin into the beds of the depraved. Throw $1 or two at a one-armed bandit, and shoot off a firework or two for the damned. All of this might seem little more than novelty, but remember the bygone era this game was made in. In 2001, even something as simple as 3D was still a novelty worthy of Smithsonian enshrinement, let alone all the ways you can influence and change these 3D worlds. Look back and chuckle if you like. But I see the evolution of mechanics first introduced in immersive sims, and the first step of what would define games like Dark Souls. The letters of these wry pixel smiths are more explosive than a poorly thought out 5 a.m. tweet. Every 2-bit gangster in this joke of a town has set their place to detonate in spectacular fashion. A renovation of legacy property, they call it. Time and time again, Max will find his legs going faster than the Roadrunner if he wants to survive the schemes of wily mobster. One deadly explosion after another will chase Max through the city on his blood-soaked whirlwind of vengeance. Remedy is just a little too ready to show off their dynamic environments, collapsing and filling with fire, stretching credulity that people would be this willing to destroy their own property just to kill one man. But I suppose it is Max Payne that we're talking about. Let us not forget the tragic history of the angst man himself, played out in one dream after another, carefully crafted levels in Max's own mindscape. He relives his tragedy over and over in a series of endless mazes, always one step from a plunge without end. His only companion, a constant one. The abyss. For us, this is endless tedium, where we live forever, death after death. That literal step into the abyss, a little too easy to come by in these janky platforming sections. These introspective musings will be far better realized in Max Payne 2, where Remedy will feel less pressure to adhere to antiquated platforming gameplay elements. We live in the past now, though. Such breakthroughs are rivers of blood away from this pain. Here, in the labyrinthine and looping synapses of pain, lies what will become the most prominent theme of Max Payne 2. Payne reads his own graphic novel. Someone is desperately trying to warn him that his reality is not what it seems. Here, in the labyrinthine and looping synapses of Payne, lies what will become the most prominent theme of Max Payne 2. Payne sees he is in a video game. Someone is desperately trying to warn him that his reality is not what it seems. The bedrock of Max's consciousness shows him the truth of his world, but Payne is powerless but to let the page turn, to let the next button press drive him forward. He has nowhere to go but down the next corridor. Powerlessness and inevitability are what really drive Max. His sour rage manufactured that the player might feel compelled to keep going, that they might make Max take his next cursed step. No longer in the domain of action, an imitation of Lynch takes the stage for this red-laced spectacle of introspection. His influences will only become louder and louder until they become absolutely unavoidable.
I don't want to go there. It's the last place I'd want to end up. But that's where I always end up anyway. Only, it's not me talking to the pink flamingo, but someone who looks the part down to the finest detail, except that he's evil. I'm hiding in the shadows, watching it all unfold. The flamingo speaks. You can speak here. It says,
"Mirrors are more fun than television."
that's mirrors are more fun than television. Somehow I know this, just don't ask me how. And I, not me, but my double, nods and smirks at this, like it was the funniest thing in the world. And then something goes wrong, and suddenly they know I'm there, hiding behind them, and they both turn to look at me with cold eyes. And the flamingo speaks again.
Threshold tolerant angels.
I have no idea what that means. And that's when I always wake up to my own scream, in that brightly lit white hospital room, strapped to my bed.
Enthusiasm and level design might have been what made Max Payne stand out, but what is in this soot-stained game that made it from moment to moment such a hit? Every second that Max remains in his tortured jacket, the next threatens to rip him apart. Enemies die in a realistic number of bullets, but so does Max. Max, however, has the power of a protagonist to slow down time that he might stay in sync with each scene. This power is not to be taken literally, just an abstraction of how combat might seem when adrenaline pumps and death is moments away. One singular moment of inattentiveness, one corner turned without the aid of time, and Max will be 6 feet under. I'm most reminded of Hotline Miami, where death might come quick, but likewise the next attempt. Die, retry, and die again, until sweet success is savored at the end of a long trail of your own corpses. These will be the loops for all 3 Max Payne games, with each iteration bringing their own spices to the formula. Here, these loops are at their most primal. Most weapons have their place, but Max's movements are cumbersome and unrefined. Shot dodging, the act of jumping through the air and going guns akimbo, seems strictly worse in most scenarios than just using bullet time. I almost think they didn't map a key to just activate slow-mo by default to incentivize you to use shot dodge, because Remedy knew of its uselessness, but thought shot dodging was way cooler than using slow-mo. On top of all this, when you finally get access to the M4, the rest of your arsenal becomes largely irrelevant, and the sawn-off shotgun always was. On their own, any would tire of these loops in no time. It's the ever-growing and masterful ability of Remedy to craft deeply personalized scenes which immerse the player in unknowable amounts of atmosphere that will go on to be what defines their games. And what makes Max Payne, Max Payne. But what was this game about, anyways? Max Payne begins at its end and ends at its beginning. A faulty framing device devoid of point. Payne means to reframe its beginning by the connective tissue and all that came before. It fails, utterly. The beginning sees Payne atop a building surrounded by police and some vengeance accomplished. The obvious question: how will Max get out of this one? The answer, of course, will bore you. But first we must examine that connective tissue if I am to explain the whys of this. Payne's story is mercifully swift, and in the style of the time, it is absurd and fantastical. Remedy admits to taking heavy inspiration from Tomb Raider in the development of Max Payne, and that shows. Not only in the most obvious of ways, Max Payne running guns akimbo from a third-person perspective, and the aforementioned awkward platforming elements, but in the willingness to toss absolutely anything at the player. By the end of Max Payne, I would not have been terribly surprised to be fighting vicious undead skeletons and bloodthirsty T-Rexes. At the end of Max's line of bombastic pyromaniac gangsters await a hard turn down the lane of the X-Files. The aforementioned Odin stand-in turns out to be the leader of a table of corporate gods that pull the strings in this city. These self-titled Aesir have a traitor in their midst, though, and Max proves a useful pawn in destroying their rebellious limb. This traitor is the vile Nicole Horn, and she has been the one manufacturing Valkyr and selling it to the various mobs and gangs throughout the city. Woden swears Payne amnesty if he only eliminates this goddess gone mad. It also just so happens to turn out that in a turn of good fortune, or if you are less generous, contrivance, that Horn is also the one that had Max's wife killed after she found out about all this. Max, in truth, needed nothing more than knowing this, as he is the avatar of vengeance given flesh. He would make even the revengeancing Raiden jealous with his fervor. Max's pain leads him down the rabbit hole to an ancient government facility where the remains of Project Valhalla rest. An apparent attempt to drug people into super soldiers. This stimulant only now turns the city against itself. And, of course, it turns out that this mad science bunker has a self-destruct mechanism just to keep the theme of Max running from only two contrived explosions alive and well. All of this culminates with the battle on a skyscraper. Horn trying to escape. The only thing standing in our way is a blood-drenched Max, who of course has no mercy for the woman responsible for his grief. Where does that leave us? How does any of this make the beginning different? What does Max do in this moment, hounded by devils that haunt him both real and phantasmal? How will he make it out? He just walks away and gives up. One makes good on his deal. For all the life and creativity poured into every ounce of Max Payne, here the ending just deflates the tension like a slow leak. The web of conspiracy, one wild twist after another, just ends with everyone going home, nothing happening. I mean, imagine just setting up this grand reveal, and Max Payne might have been born more out of enthusiasm than competency. But now the year is 2003. The world of games is changing faster than a New York minute. Remedy isn't a bunch of fresh-faced new recruits anymore. They know what they want Max Payne to be and have everything they need to make it. 2004 would be a landmark year for gaming. Half-Life 2 would push the envelope of what was possible. But Max Payne 2 would reap an early harvest from that game, benefiting from their revolutionary Havoc engine. Debris now bounces in the environment, no longer mere particle effects and pre-scripted physics events. Bodies fly back from shotgun blasts, explosions and paint cans, and myriad other debris flying. Explosive red boxes litter the landscape, and grenades are made available in more than ample supply to make sure you will see plenty of booms that'll rock every inch of this more fully realized world. Quaint, now. But even in the journey from Max Payne 1 to 2, you feel the paradigm shift. The world is a dynamic place now. One crucial step to creating Remedy's full vision of a film made live. Max doesn't look as much a dubiously made mannequin anymore, and his face no longer imitates his writers knotted into permanent grimace. He emotes, at least as much as you would imagine the stone-hearted Max to emote. Phone calls and other notes are now read out in real time. Gameplay no longer rudely interrupted by cutscenes just to play some audio. Unfortunately, TV shows are still a series of still images. Fortunately, there are a lot more of them this time. Baseball Bat Boy, Address Unknown, Dick Justice, and the illustrious lords and ladies have all multiple episodes that play out in the levels as the game goes on. All of this contributes to the coalescence of the Remedy style into what would be made for every game from here to Control. If in Max Payne 1 we saw this style's infancy, here we see its adolescence. Let me give you an example. Here, the mood is set perfectly. Thunder and rain rage outside, while the familiar sound of lords and ladies comes on. Sit for an episode, and maybe languish after. This place is rich with detail, character. Every inch tells the story. Every sound is perfectly engineered to immerse you further. The whats and hows of their style have taken definite shape, but the finer points of storytelling and understanding of narrative flow will still evade Remedy for this installment. Still, this is a lot. The gameplay of Max Payne 2 has matured as well. Many finer points of the original system being ironed out, movement, reloading, and shooting are all now faster and slow-mo. Shot dodging isn't a meme anymore, but a valuable tool with faster execution, longer reach, and shorter recovery. Weapons now feel a lot more balanced in this system. Even the almost unused shorty now turns Max into a dervish of death as you shoot, spin, and reload in a beautiful yet macabre dance. Max Payne's story remains its greatest weakness, weaving one predictable beat after another cliché. Where the narrative has faltered, however, the themes have absolutely flourished. Max can't stop his life from being an endless series of loops. The Ouroboros never ends, least of all here. The beginning is the end, and the end is the beginning, all over again. Another love lost, another life snuffed out. The crime falling into the orbit of Max Payne, a celestial body on collision course with tragedy. This time it's Mona Sachs, that name right out of a James Bond movie. She's one of the many bit players from the original Max Payne that will see their roles expanded in the sequel, and will likewise see their new roles cut short. Pay attention to where that gun falls. It'll be important later. Max's only choice is to go forward, along a linear sequence of scares, knowing what the conclusion is, but still driven forward to the death of Mona Sachs. In the past, Max finds himself innocently drugged into a warehouse, hearing a gunshot and deciding to investigate. The first suspect of this crime, a television playing the pilot episode of the hard-boiled detective, Dick Justice. Dick sees his wife murdered and is framed, turned on by the cops and hunted by mobsters. He speaks only in metaphors and deals only in death. Sound familiar? Dick Justice was one of the names of the original design documents for what would become Max Payne. The other is Max Heat, who also makes a cameo as the star of his own porno. This prodding at the walking cliché that was the first incarnation of Max sets up perfectly what Max Payne 2 is going to be about. Musing of how the malleable nature of reality allows fiction to shape it. His situation is so unreal, his character unimaginably cliché. Wouldn't you wonder, at least for a second, if the world turned against you and you felt you had no control as the entire universe unfurled before you, no different than any film you had ever seen? Wouldn't you have to stop and ask if the world around you wasn't a carefully created charade? And what does it mean to be that man, to be Max? For he is a puppet. Every step planned in advance. This isn't the last time that TV will be particularly prescient of reality. Every single episode of every show is a prelude to some small part of Max's life, especially Address Unknown. Max falls asleep with the TV on, an episode of Address playing. The protagonist says he fell into a nightmare, a twisted noir New York, Max's New York. The ongoing episode narrates Max's fate, that he must find Mona, save her. One crack in the glass, as Max's life is shaped by fiction. Mona will die. Everyone he touches dies. Neither he nor Mona can run from fate. Max cannot escape his own cliches. Max wakes up, but there is no escaping his dream. He finds himself and Mona hounded, contracts taken on their lives by some unknown party, enemies all around him like a character in his game. Max seeks out Mona for answers. Unlucky for Max, she has taken residence in an old funhouse of the very thing fueling his own madness. Address unknown. The rundown attraction tells Max everything he needs to know, that it is a descent into madness. Here Max sees his own world, a series of cardboard cutouts and facades, a caricature of reality, but a home to Max. Every step closer to Mona is a step further down his own unraveling, as the metaphorical descent into madness becomes a literal one.
Stray dogs, little wonder.
The flesh. Oh, the flesh is coming. I think I died. I think they're here. They're here. Get away. Get away. I'm gonna hurt you. I'm gonna diagnose you. Paranoid schizophrenic. You are insane. Psychotic. You have to eat plenty of pills to get better.
Before the stage lifts and Max takes the only move left to him, a walk behind the curtain. Answers await Payne, but they will only send him further down this rabbit hole, right back to the spiraling conspiracies that were the climax of the first Payne. Mona blames the Aesir, Woden and his ilk, saying they have put out a contract on anyone that knows about them, and Max knows them only too well. Max is heralded by Mona to an apartment for answers. But when she is arrested and the question comes why he was there, what he was helping her to do, he doesn't know. Cannot know. Asking Max how he got there is like asking a roller coaster how it got up a hill, how it works, what it's doing. It has just as few answers. Max is only a vehicle for us. His story pretends that we might have more targets to shoot at, more levels to experience. Death doesn't stop coming for Payne or Mona just because their situation is unreal. Mona escapes and Payne follows her to the address unknown funhouse. The walls here in the halcyon home of Max are collapsing. The barriers between reality and fiction blending as real death, real loss stalks the home of these cardboard cutouts. Max pursues his pursuers out of this place to their base. The reasons, unimportant. Where at the bottom of an elevator shaft is a gun, one placed almost identical to the scene from the beginning of the game. Another crack. One more way the world unravels around Payne. Now even the past and future combine. Time is a flat circle. This particular ride culminates with Mona down the barrel of Max's partner's gun. And Max has a choice. Save Mona or don't. Both lead to the same place and neither leave Max with anything by the end. Max gets a bullet for his troubles and wakes into one more nightmare, where he returns to the address unknown playhouse only to see himself inside it, embodying every kind of madness. In this fever dream, Payne sees the truth. This insanity is the only way to see the world Max is in. The only truth. Max constructs his world. Nothing he sees can be real.
An all-new episode of Lords and Ladies, brought to you in part by Castling Insurance Companies. My lord, I will marry her. My mind is made up. She will be my lady.
Over my dead body, brother. That harlot will never soil our family name. You have no right to call yourself a lord. I am here to do the duty of a sheriff's heir.
You have insulted my lady for the last time, my lord. I demand satisfaction.
As you wish, little brother. Hang down.
No, my lord, nothing good can come of this.
Villain!
My lord, I beg of you.
My lord, brother, heed her words. Maybe we can yet solve this peacefully.
Have at thee!
No!
My lord!
Brother! What have you done? Brother, you have slain me.
My lord, we are lost.
My lady, what have I done? All is lost. What have I done?
Let us jump ahead a bit. Max finds himself in the clutches of a former ally, Vladimir, another bit player from Max Payne 1, when this happens.
Besides, a gentleman always avenges the insults done to his lady. You did kill Winterson.
Fiction itself now assaults Max. Even lords and ladies has been turned against this fair lord. It has lodged a bullet in his brain. But Max is the protagonist, so naturally his only consequence is one more nightmare. In this final dream, Max sees reality play out. Events he could never have known of and didn't see play on television. It's almost as if Max dreams reality into existence. This, unfortunately, is the end of such musings. The rest of Max Payne 2 is solely concerned with the tangible, and we're left only to wonder, was all of this a creation of Max? Was it a dream? Or something darker? Max Payne 3 will not be made by Remedy, and will leave these themes aside. But somehow I am certain if we had seen a Remedy-helmed Max Payne 3, this is the plot thread it would have pulled upon. Those threads on the musings of the linear-natured games, and the adherence to genre conventions dooming protagonists before they even take the first step into their world, and the cyclical nature of the way that media influences reality, and reality influences the way that creative media are made. Much of that latter themed influenced by the moral panic of the late 90s and early 2000s, creating an atmosphere where many video games were repressed. People saying asinine things such as,
"He's been playing those video games an awful lot. Makes him a very good shooter. Holding that controller's like holding a gun, they say in the news."
That hypothetical Remedy Max Payne 3 being more introspective is almost assured, with so many signs pointing to Max Payne's reality being so unreal, nothing but what we perceive it as. A video game, a creative endeavor. But much like how Address Unknown sees no conclusion in Max Payne 2, neither will this idea conclude. At least, not in Max Payne. Indeed, the biggest failing of Max Payne 2 is its failure to meaningfully conclude these themes. Having at this point had Max live in dreamscapes long enough, the game supposes, the narrative resumes its story of cops, mobsters, and secret societies to conclusions both rote and written. Mona is killed, Vlad gets his comeuppance in a boss battle where again Max shoots things in the environment to bring about his enemy downfall. Woden is betrayed by Vlad, who in an 11th hour twist was his pupil and adopted son. I really don't care for a bit comedy character like Vlad being elevated to the degree he is here in the sequel. It just doesn't play well for me, and this whole plot is just dull, honestly. Max gets one last goodbye with Mona where he reaches some level of acceptance, both about her death and his wife's. Despite the letdown of its conclusion, I am astonished at the quality of Max Payne 2. Its gameplay is absolutely stellar, even 18 years later, and its story's intricately woven themes, at least until that ending, are a precursor to similar story beats BioShock would later hit with admittedly greater competency and commensurate fame. If there's one thing Remedy are true masters of, it's creating spaces in which you could exist forever, and I want to stay in Max Payne 2. No, really, I don't want to go to Max Payne 3. Oh, must we really? Well, I suppose. As stated, the actual narratives of Max Payne were never its strong suit. What Max Payne did well was make you feel a part of its scenes and create a unique and interesting universe for you to inhabit. Max Payne 3 is the first game without Remedy at the helm. Rockstar Games takes the lead here, and it was decided that first and sole the focus would be on telling a story. Not allowing you to participate in a story, mind you, but telling a story at you. Again, starting at the end, Max Payne 3 puts a close lens on the man himself, making you think this is going to be some sort of slow burn character study. Maybe we'll learn something about wrong. Oh, so wrong. We focus on Max so he can shave his hair later to look like some mix of Jason Statham and Walter White. Because one thing Max Payne 3 doesn't shred is being derivative for derivation's sake. All the camp of the noir detective shaved off, Payne is a pencil ground down to nothing. A stub of both man and character. No better is Rockstar's stern unwillingness to do anything with Max's character shown than in this scene. Just take a look.
I hope you're not drinking on the job, gentlemen. Kidding, I hope you are. Just stay off the yayo, I don't have enough to share. I'm kidding again. Oh, Mikey, even though we just met, I feel like we are good friends, you know? I feel like safe with you guys. Know that, like real safe.
That's great.
Yeah, and I love New York. The East Hamptons, do you know it?
Not really. I spent my honeymoon in Montauk.
Oh, where's that?
It's just down the road.
Whatever. Last time I was there, I got so wasted, I nearly shit myself. I didn't know you were married.
Yeah, well, my wife passed away.
Good. No, not good. Bad. Real bad. But good because now I can get you laid a lot. It is great to be single, hey? I love a woman. She's with another and she doesn't want to know it. Fuck her. I mean, could you believe that shit?
Okay.
Excuse me, I'm going to go to speak to Felipe. Felipe! You crazy crackhead! Lay off the yayo, hey? Pasos. Walk with me.
What does this scene inform us about where Max's character has gone since the end of Max Payne 2? He just listens to this man drone on about how good it is that his wife is dead. This ought to madden him, or at least provoke some kind of response. But what does he do? Nothing. He just sits there and then walks away, remarking on the scene not at all. So much of the game is this, just scene after scene where if you wanted to explore Max, you could. You could write any amount of internal dialogue, have him react, or hell, just act! But instead, in the vast majority of scenes, all he does is factually and wryly describe what happens, and then just move on, like some sort of noir detective line generator. I went into this game perfectly willing to see a new, grittier take on all this, but what I got was some of the worst writing and most rote gameplay the 2010s have to offer. If it isn't obvious, I have a seething contempt for this game, and I really do think that if it does anything interesting, it is encapsulating every single awful design trend of the 2010s into one game. Payne 3 tosses away almost everything that made Max Payne worthwhile. The ardent dedication to scene building, the small debris in every level that made them feel alive and unique are gone. The late 2000s and early 2010s were an era where it was very common to eschew the silly elements of past game franchises, like Max being a walking arsenal, or moving and dodging with the grace of Muhammad Ali despite being a broken old man. God, I'm glad that post-2016 Doom, the games aren't so concerned with looking serious anymore and are just willing to be unabashedly gamey again. Anyways, back to whatever this is. So, naturally, we have a broken Max that moves more realistically. Air control during dives is reduced, and there's a greater focus on animation-based movements, your inputs feeling downplayed and sluggish. Max is now limited to carrying 3 weapons at a time, or 2 if you want to dual-wield pistol-sized weapons, which is irrelevant as almost every SMG or rifle-sized weapons that fit into that third slot are useless compared to guns akimbo anyhow. There's a greater emphasis on precision. Every gun kills in one headshot and is always pinpointedly accurate in the first shot. This sounds good until you realize this makes the entire arsenal redundant in slow-mo. The only thing that matters is finding the gun that spews the most bullets as fast as possible and putting them into enemies' heads. Dual machine pistols become the only weapons worth using whenever you can find them. Also, with this enhanced focus on realisms, you drop whatever rifle you were holding if you select dual pistols. Frustrating in the few scenarios where it is worth using a rifle, as it's only too easy to drop it, forcing you to scour the floors for your lost gun. Oh, and look at that. It's my favorite friend from the 2000s, Mr. Chest High Wall. And you know what that means? Max Payne, a game most fun when moving and shooting as a flower of death. The avatar of vengeance, given form as a Beyblade, is now reduced to popping a squat and waiting for the sweet bullet time gauge to recharge. I cannot overstate how much I hate this decision and how much it drains all fun and life from the game. All the dynamism of combat, the nuance of weapon selection. Gone, 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 all for this trend-chasing trash. It isn't all bad, though, as I adapted to this system. While you only get a sliver of bullet time for killing enemies now, you have infinite bullet time while shot dodging. So I shot dodged. A lot. I mean, a ton. I mean the whole game. This is essentially the one solution to combat now if you don't want to go behind cover and cower. Find the fastest shooting gun and kill all the enemies that you can see with a series of shot dodges. It isn't the worst time I've ever had, but in comparison to Max Payne 2, it is miserable. But that isn't even the worst of it. Oh no, that isn't even the worst of it. If you can look back into your memory and remember this period, what was the worst recurring mechanic to go into all these games chasing a bit of that modern warfare pod? What was the one thing they all shared that no one liked? That's right, turret segments. And Max Payne 2 has them in spades. Turret segment after turret segment after turret segment. Turret segments on a plane, turret segments on a bus, turret segments on a boat. It's got them one after another. And the best part, that bus one, you only have to fire a single bullet to win the entire encounter. That's right, it's the best kind of turret segment, the kind that isn't even real gameplay. If you're sitting there, though, and listening to all this, saying, oh, turret segments aren't that bad, let me sell you on what makes turret segments utterly unbearably boring and frustrating for most people. The first and best argument that I have is that they are just escort missions with a facelift. No one likes escort missions. Losing because some dumb NPC wandered out of your view for 5 minutes is infuriating. Generally, losing because of something the player is in direct control of is frustrating, and turret segments are no different as you kill enemy after enemy trying to kill the thing you're on, while you yourself are invincible and have no autonomy of movement. Secondly, it removes a core aspect of what makes the game fun. Movement that is under your control. Removing this core element of gameplay and replacing it with no additional depth, and if anything, significantly lessening the difficulty, just makes turret segments an exercise in patience. You mostly just have to wait for it to be over. Turret segments are, in essence, just really long cutscenes, and Max Payne 3 loves them. I mean that it loves both turret segments, of course, and cutscenes. Max Payne 3 is so adherent of its cutscenes, not only overlong but plentiful. It will make sure you experience every moment of every level the way the developers intend. Gameplay is so maddeningly often broken up by cutscenes for no other purpose than to make sure you are looking exactly where the developers wanted you to look in exactly the way they want you to look at it. This is seen perfectly in the stadium level where control is wrested from you 10 times in as many minutes. A minute of gameplay, a minute of watching a scene, a minute of gameplay, a minute of watching a scene. The game just has no trust for you to exist in the environment without wresting control away from you over and over and over. And if that wasn't enough, staying in a scene too long to smell the roses of these beautiful digital environments will result in the game just killing Payne for one reason or another. I can only imagine they looked at Payne taking time to stop watch TV and goons talking casually in Max Payne 2 and absolutely despised it. Real gritty men don't have time for lords and ladies, which also isn't in this, by the way. No, that's all just too silly. You can really feel the shadow of the developer looming over your back, ready to push you out of the way like an eager older brother, yelling, "No, this is how you play the game right!" I kept thinking, time and again, if you want to have so much control over the player, why even make a game? Why make a fundamentally interactive piece of media so utterly uninteractive? Oh, and then there's the plot. You thought you had escaped, didn't you? You wriggling little worm. Oh, no. No, no, no. Outright ignoring the implications of Max Payne 2, Max finds himself unable to move on from his pain, instead drowning it in booze and drugs. He's contacted by an old friend claiming to be a buddy from the force to serve as an escort for some rich Brazilian bastards, the Broncos. Initially skeptical, he takes the deal after killing a mobster's son in an altercation, of course, of all things, protecting a woman, and Max finds the streets of New York hostile to him again. How Max was still living here after killing literally hundreds of mobster's sons before, I'm not sure, and Max Payne has no intent to explore this question itself, which hits upon a salient point. Much of the point of Max Payne 3 is to add grit and realism to an inherently cartoony character. How Max, in his cardboard world of cartoonish violence, was ever supposed to fit into this Sicario-inspired stage of blood and sand, I will never understand. Unfortunately for Max, his benefactors are kidnapped and killed, one after the other. Entire armies of gangs send themselves after these people and are slaughtered by Max, until it is revealed that the man who came to recruit him never knew him, and was just an agent of Victor Bronco, youngest of the Bronco sons, who sought to have his brothers and father killed, that he might in one fell stroke inherit the family fortune and reinforce his political ticket as a law and order male who will undo these tragic injustices to his family. So he hired Max, renowned killer of hundreds of gangsters and undoer of powerful ne'er-do-wells, that he might, take the fall. Yes, that's it. He can take the fall for, I'm sure Victor was going to get to that point eventually. I'm sure. Oh, and he was also kidnapping the populace and selling their organs in concert with the police, because I guess killing your entire family for your inheritance just wasn't gritty or lucrative enough. Unsurprisingly, hiring Max backfires, and his scheme is laid to waste by the man notoriously effective at doing just that. But Max, at the end, refuses to kill Victor, and this is laid out as some sort of redemption for Max, even though killing people or acting outside the law is never portrayed as a flaw of his. Quite the opposite. At this point, he's killed literally thousands of people, including members of the police and Brazilian government, and the game had nothing to say about any of that. But this one rich bastard, making sure he faces the people's justice. That redeem Max and undo the trauma of losing his wife, child, and lover before his very eyes. After this, in the game's epilogue, it's revealed that Bronco was killed in prison shortly after his incarceration anyhow. So this act of mercy is almost framed as even more cruel than killing him originally. What are we meant to take from this? And considering this game's pretense of seriousness, how on God's green earth did Max walk away from killing hundreds of members of the Brazilian police force scot-free? This game is utterly incurious of Max, except when it makes the least possible sense, taking no time to explore him, what drives him, his flaws, or how he might become a better person, except when it is utterly bewildering to do so. This is all without even beginning to mention Max Payne 3's gross depiction of Brazil and its people, painting most as either depraved or corrupt, all the while acting as some sort of disgusting tourism for thoughtless middle class to gawk at people whom the game frames as living in squalor and unchecked crime, ignoring the fact that the enduring property of many of the people of Brazil and throughout the world is brought about in no small part because it benefits multinational megacorporations, which Max serve, to have such an underclass of people. Max Payne 3 simultaneously perpetuates stereotypes of the poor, and especially about the poor outside of America, as either dangerous or exploitative. All of this vapidity just makes the game's focus on narrative all the more frustrating. Not only does it spend a significant amount of time taking control away from the player to make sure they see this trash heap, but every moment spent outside the player's control is spent on inane, insipid nonsense with so much pretensions and references to better media, constantly reminding you, you could be watching The Wire, Breaking Bad, or The Sopranos, but you aren't. You are, for some godforsaken reason, watching Max Payne 3. Payne is dead now. Not in his universe, but ours. That's all that matters. Because Payne was never but pixels and angst. An imaginary creature in the eye of a writer. Surely then, there is no hope for the future of Max. He is over. But what about the writer? What happened to the man that imagined Max? And why was he so concerned about the truth of reality around him? What drove him to wonder if fiction might change the world around it, and what will become of such a man? What if I told you that Max Payne 3 isn't the third Max Payne game? Alan Wake is. So that is Max Payne, the whole series in the bag. Funny story, I actually thought I recorded a little outro sequence for Pathologic. I did record it, but somehow it did not make it into the video. I don't know how I didn't put it on there. But it did make it in there. This one will, though. This one is in here because you're listening to it right now. So I really appreciate you listening this far into the video. It's really great that you made it this far. If you did, please consider liking and subscribing, because as a channel that's just starting out, it really does help to get even a little bit of bump into whatever the arcane secrets of YouTube algorithm happen to be. Surely that is a part of it, what we assume. So I would really appreciate that. Of course, the next subject is going to be Alan Wake, maybe unsurprisingly. I haven't actually seen a lot of people. I've seen people mention Max Payne talking about Alan Wake 3, but not really taking it from the perspective that seems really clear to me now, after having finished Max Payne 3. But I mean, from the outside, Max Payne 3 I thought was going to be the series that became progressively more introspective and curious about Max as a character over time. That was kind of the angle I was approaching it from, what I was expecting the series to be. It did not turn to be that at all, and God, Max Payne 3 is so bad. The best thing I can say about it is that I'm just glad to never have to think about it again. Now that I'm done with this recording, I can just delete it, and I will never think about that game again. It is terrible. Yeah, so again, thanks for listening, and hopefully I'll see you around for the Alan Wake video. And of course, we're going to continue after that with, if you haven't noticed, we're kind of doing like a remedy thing. So I guess I'll do Quantum Break after that. I'm not super thrilled about that. And then, of course, you know, Control, which I haven't actually played the Alan Wake DLC for Control yet, so and I'm probably not going to play it until I get to talking about that game. But yeah, I'm really curious to see that. I'm really curious to see how that plays out. And yeah, that's it.